Second, as usual, great. Good to see one person at least is here watching. As you can see, a bit casual this evening, guys. No tie, in a different location. Traveling with my son, Danny. Welcome. We're going to try something interesting and novel this evening, partly because I don't like that aligns with the similar thinking to myself. Yeah, we'll just wait for a few minutes and see if anybody comes on board. And are warming up, and I just had a little seizure there with my intranet. I'm not sure how good it is. Yeah, sorry there. Yeah, I can see it's a bit laggy, you say. And Jerry just came on. Hello, Jerry. Jerry's son of a Mick. Son of Mick. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for coming on board. Yeah, as you can see, I'm in a hotel. Back now. Okay. We'll give it a go anyway this evening, guys. So, any questions, if type them out into the comments section and I'll show it on the screen. Again, not 100% sure how seamlessly this works across Facebook and YouTube. It's supposed to, but I'm not sure if I've checked all the right boxes and things like that. Hello, TJWK Ireland. Good evening. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for coming on board. So I was just going to open with a short commentary, my own personal observations about the parliamentary elections in Ireland, which frankly were a travesty and a debacle for a so-called democratic country. Where are we? Where are we? Can you see me again, guys? I've got a strong internet. We'll keep going. We'll do our best, guys. If it does become unmanageable, we'll say goodnight and we'll pick it up again when I'm back in a secure location. Yeah. Let's just make the most of it. So anyway, I've reconnected here, and let's see. We've lost a couple of people already, sadly. But anyway, so the commentary on the general election is that it was a farce and a debacle for a so-called first world modern supposedly democratic country and state. Because first of all, those that aren't perhaps Irish or haven't been watching what's been going on, there was great popular support for a candidate called Maria Steen, a non-establishment candidate. And she was blocked by the screen. Yeah, it's switching on and off. But again, I'm so sorry, guys. Nothing I can do about it. We'll truck on and do our best here. Anyway, Maria Steen would have been a very popular candidate. I think I'm amongst those people who believe she would absolutely have won outright had she been allowed to run in the election. But the county councils were ordered by the major political parties to Hello there. I won't say your name. You know why? F.O. Nosy, right? Okay. Anyway, welcome for joining us this evening. Maria Steen arguably would have swept the board. She seems like an absolutely capable and confident person. And if it was up to the people, and I keep saying this, guys, they run these election processes, but only some short time ago, there was I was watching, I think is it called Gogglebox with my son Danny. It's one of his favorite programs. And they did an emergency test signal broadcast in the UK. And apparently everybody's phones in the whole country lit up with this test signal, this times, air raid sirens. And everybody received these notices on their phones. This is just a test. And some people said, hey, hold on, who gave my phone number to the government? And somebody else answers, well, hey, you know what, they know everything about you. They know how to reach you anytime they want to, type of thing. So obviously, once you've registered, certainly a modern smartphone, you're on a database whereby the government can contact you immediately. The question has to be, why? Hi there, Sean. Welcome. Why then can't we do things like our presidential elections, like we were voting for the Eurovision Song Contest or X Factor or some TV program where you can just tap in a vote? Why can't we do that? And the main reason that we don't do that is because it would do away with the notion of having to have all of these politicians sitting in Parliament buildings making decisions on our behalf without actually consulting us, because it would be very, very easy. Hello there, Nobby. Nice to see you, buddy. And Alan, yeah. As he says, Alan says here, I'll pop this up on the screen. Well, Sean says, let's say, I hope you can see this, guys. I'm doing there it is. There we are. So Sean's comment came up. I hope you can see it, guys. This is on Facebook. It was a fraudulent election, absolutely. I'm now also going to show Alan. Alan says it's like something you'd see in Africa, rigged. Absolutely, it was rigged. Then we had, so we ended up, instead of having at least the 4 candidates, not to mention other people that went to the county councils to basically, beg is not the right word, but to seek their support so that they can get actually on the ballot. So you can't get on the ballot unless you have, I think, is it 20 councils that support you or 20 TDs? I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but the system has been orchestrated. Hi there, Noons Flower and Sorsha Naharan. The whole point, sorry, I've got to be careful here. I don't get distracted as I'm talking. Yeah, there was these other candidates who were all, they went to the councils and they laid out their reasons for wanting to run. I personally know a number of them. They didn't get past, the councils just decided we're having nothing to do with it, regardless of the quality of the candidates, including someone like Maria Steen. So they've managed to corral the presidential process in such a manner that basically only somebody in the cabal on the inside is going to be allowed to get into any position of authority or power that might arguably interfere in the shenanigans that we call political office in Ireland, and actually most of the way around the world as well. Yes, Noons Flower, thank you for the pleasant comment there. Yeah. How am I? I'm well, thank you very much. Yeah, not too bad, actually. Been very busy doing different projects. And actually, so we'll round off the topic here, guys, on the presidential election. So we end up with a huge amount of spoiled votes, which is a statement by the electorate, or at least the ones that went to the polls. And it was less than 50% of people went to the polls in the first place. Catherine Connolly, who won, as far as I recall, got around 40% of those that turned up. So it's 40% of 50%. All right. So that's got to be somewhere around 20% then, 20 something percent, the low 20s, below 25% anyway. 20% of the people who voted only voted for Catherine, about a landslide or a mandate and all the rest of it. That's astonishing that now we've got somebody who is clearly many people who spoil their votes, and many people who refuse to vote at all, 50% of the population, the voting population at least, and then I think it's something like 15% of the votes that were registered were spoiled. The other two, well, the other candidate, Heather Humphreys, could go down in the low teens, wasn't it? And then the other guy, Gavin, who had to resign from the ballot paper because of a financial scandal, that was coming out in the wash. It's horrible. It's shocking. And like I said, all the government has to do is to change our so-called voting system, or even when big decisions are being made in the Dáil, instead of holding referendums, all they have to do is have all of the registered voters connected somehow by their smartphones or something like that, or even to have a voting system where you can go to the post office and put in your choice, and like you do if you're collecting welfare or something like that. It would be so simple. We've got the tech for it. If you've got the tech to send out warning alarms to everybody who owns a smartphone in the country, then you've got the tech to be able to employ this in the voting system. All right. Here's another one here from Nobby. Spoiling my vote carried more weight than any vote I ever casted. I'm siding with the people. And again, we have to hope now that she's officially in, but 7 years, guys, that's a long time, So we have to hope that Catherine Connolly will prove to be a worthwhile incumbent of the highest office in Ireland. But it just goes against, common sense rationale that a politician, someone who's been a politician most of her life and was a barrister before that, who actually, when it suited her, when it was convenient, she served the interests of the corporate elites, the cabal, the corrupted, the diabolicals, I call them, and was instrumental in having many people evicted from their homes. Probably, even if we don't fully understand it at this point, but probably unlawfully, certainly amorally, if someone has come up through the ranks of the system and has become, quote, successful, you can almost guarantee that they've either been involved in corruption or they've turned a blind eye to it at a greater or lesser degree. And I would argue, if I was a barrister, it's one thing being a soldier, right? You're in the soldier, you're on the front lines, and the makeup of an army, requires that you follow orders. You do as you're told. That's the nature of warfare, right? You're not supposed to have a moral conscience. As a matter of fact, that's what basic training is all about. It trains the morality out of you and replaces it with obedience. And it's the responsibility of your superiors if they give you, a criminal order, so to speak. But there's a lot of things allowed in war that wouldn't be normally allowed in peacetime, of course. But it's different when you're working in the legal system or the law, because with your expertise, you can be used for a tool of good or evil, depending on which side you choose to serve. And all of these arguments about barristers, they're duty bound to, yes, they're duty bound to give the best legal advice. But morality comes into all the choices that we're making. And if as a barrister, you don't start off by saying, right, I intend to be the best, most honest, most fair and just and wise and maybe compassionate barrister that I can possibly be. If you don't start off on that premise, you're not, in my opinion, a genuine professional. You've got no ethics. Not really. They'll write off the excuse, people got evicted and I was just doing my job. Remember my old saying, I was just driving the train to Auschwitz. And of course, not that Heather Humphreys would have been any better, because she's even more a product of the establishment. Fine Gael and Fine Gael wanted her in so that they could control the Arabs as well, of course. Here's someone here now, here's another comment. Oh, Alan again, you're getting the repeat viewing here. She's now evicting an elderly couple from their home in Phoenix Park. Oh, well done. A little bit of levity. Well done, Alan. I was curious, funny enough, not to hear anything at all from Higgins over the last the last few weeks, there's been very, very little said. But anyway, like I said, she's in there now. It doesn't help matters because she wouldn't. First of all, she wouldn't have got on the ballot. Secondly, she wouldn't be in that position now to actually take up her seat in the RS if she wasn't a tool of the system. It's really that simple. Okay, so again, Nobby, I'm going to give give Nobby another view here. 7 years will probably turn into 14 years. I don't know. I don't know what age she is now, but she looks like, mind you, Higgins is getting up there as well, isn't he? So anyway, we'll see what happens. Now, remember again, guys. Yeah, very good. And there's another one. Nobby, you're going to get you're going to get famous after this. Now, I don't think I need to tell anybody that Nobby McNobb is not this man's real name. I happen to know him and trust him and like him, but we won't blow your cover. Don't worry, Nobby. Okay. Again, right, here's another one. Oh, thank you, Sean. She's 68 apparently. So no, okay, she looked to me anyway. I thought she looked a little bit older than that, but anyway, let's hope. Yes, Jelly Belly says somebody name one honest politician. You see, this is an interesting comment. I'll come back to you in a moment, this comment here, but let's just look at this because the whole point tonight is to answer a few questions. This is ad hoc, guys, completely live. As you can see, I'm in a hotel room, and my son is very patiently waiting for me here to take him for a plate of spaghetti bolognese. Isn't that right, Danny? Yes. We won't pan him because he's in a state of undress over here, and is very patiently waiting for his dad to take him for some food, which we'll do at the end of the hour. So yes, this point here, somebody named one honest politician. Again, much of the information that I put out there it connects to this original principle you see top right, the feminine, the masculine embedded in the divinity. And believe it or not, this archetypal theory, we're not going to discuss much about it today unless I get particular questions. But if you understand this original principle, and if you want to know more, guys, please go and look at some of the videos I've done. Some are more specific than others. I've had a few interviews with a man called Jesse Hall on a thing called The Missing Link. They're quite long videos, but if you want some good novel entertainment, and I say good, enlightening, if I could say it, entertainment, then you could watch a couple of those videos where I explain that we're actually all connected, believe it or not, to the properties of light. And when I say we are all, not just humanity, but the whole of nature, the whole of the cosmos existence, if you like, but that there are archetypal themes and patterns running through this, which explains something like this, like name one honest politician. Look, politics started with Machiavelli, who was a profoundly sinister Italian politician of sorts, or a courtier or whatever in the courts. And he came up with all of these devious notions of basically how to trick the population and your opponents so that you stay in power. But it's all based really on lies and deception, okay? And if, as I keep saying, the master of lies is you know who, then that's the first giveaway. As a matter of fact, it's the biggest turnoff for me personally in a business or a family or a professional, or even if it were the case, a personal relationship. If somebody deliberately lies to me, and well, it's just an immediate warning flag to me. This person needs to be put at a distance. Treat them with great care and caution and suspicion. The trouble is that's who our politicians are. They're largely sociopaths. They're in career. I call them career liars and moral deviants. Well, actually, most people that are in senior positions in service to the state and the various different states around the world, especially in autocratic agencies. Hello there, Susan. Nice to see you, Susan. Danny, thank you. Sorry. Danny's iPad just went off there. Thanks, son. But if you use the use the earphones, son. Okay, good boy. That's all right. Thank you. Nobody minds. Yeah. Yes, so the structures, you see, this is another thing I've explained to people before. If you walk this back, yeah, the symbolism up here in the, I keep doing it the wrong way because I'm back to front of camera, but the symbolism there explains basically how things were, the original principle before the proverbial fall, you know, in this notion of the Garden of Eden and all that, how things were and how things were supposed to be before something went wrong. And after something went wrong, that's what we call human history, okay? It's the story which begins, believe it or not, with Cain murdering his brother and then going off to the land of Nod, which is Iran today, right? And he sets up a city called Enoch. And it's there, and again, check your scriptures if you want to check this out, guys. And it's there that he first brings in the notion of taxation and of organized government and so on and so forth. And so you ask the question, the logical question, well, who is really the founder of modern human civilization, the one we see today? And it should be no great surprise to anyone that there's all this turmoil and chaos and perversity in the world today, yeah, because Satan, if you like, has had 6,000 biblical years to work on all of these infrastructures and the kingdoms and empires of the world. And there's two main things to notice. Number first is the presence of the dominant satanic male mindset, which is so embodied in the colors of black and red, which we saw in the Nazi regime. We see in many other regimes, particularly where there's an absence of blue. Blue, you see, represents the feminine. And even these colors, or this color phenomenon that I talk about sometimes, guys, is to do, it's reflected in national colors as well, in the flags of the world. But actually, it's only consistent up to 1960. It's very interesting. It's as if something big happened in and around that time period. And again, we won't go into that today, but up to that period, it is consistent. After that, and definitely after I published the first book on this matter about 30 years ago now, anybody could be using the information in the book to influence, you know, their political colors, and therefore it can't be used as a consistent measure. It only works because it was archetypal. Nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody realized the consistencies across the board. Nearly all the democratic nations were red, white, and blue, for example. Even Russia, before it left the Allies and went off to form the Soviet Union, red, white, and blue, changed its flag to red. 70 years plus an interesting buffer of 6.5 years, 6 years and 6 months. They reverted back to the flag today. So, but anyway, not to get into a political discussion here today. The point I'm trying to make is once you understand this original principle concept, you start to realize that, number one, there is only supposed to be one authority in your life. And that is supposed to be your connection to the divine, not your connection to the government or the president or the corrupt judges in the courts, or even to the local policeman. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need some sort of agents and agencies in the world today, in this fallen world, right? And if you get this concept, fallen means that we're inclined towards sinful behavior or wicked behavior. And, you know, we have these inclinations in us. So you have to police those inclinations somehow. And that's the reason we have police forces, and that's the reason why we have armies, right? In the best case scenarios, it's there to protect the people, okay? I see Shady here. I'll come back to this in a second. I'll just say something. Blue and red mixed makes purple. They love to mock. Actually, very interesting, because this is to do with the original principle up there, you know? I'll see if we can pull this one up just to show. Oh, Machiavelli applied to De Valera. Very interesting, Sean. Didn't know that. It'd certainly be interesting. They weren't alive around the same time, were they? Oh, I see. Oh, the word Machiavelli. I see. 1 second. I'll come back to you in a moment there, Shady. Let's show Sean's comment here. I first heard the word Machiavelli applied to De Valera. De Valera was a statesman in Ireland, the first major statesman who fought in the Rising and was instrumental in the sort of the splitting of Ireland into two camps, supposedly, you know, which would reflect to, like, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, or even including Sinn Féin to a certain extent. It gets complicated. But yeah, De Valera was definitely a Machiavellian politician. There's no doubt about it. Now, to go back to blue and white now, so just jump across here. How are we doing? 25 minutes in? Okay, guys, I hope people find this interesting. We've got about 40 odd people there looking in, which is good. Blue and red mixed. Traditionally, purple has been the color of royalty, but I want to explain something. Purple actually is not a real color. All right. Now, by that, I'm talking about the original colors in the rainbow, okay, which is light reflected, okay? So the original colors and the colors that we see, the average human being, when they look at natural daylight and the colors around them, we are limited to a range from 400 nanometers at the blue, the deep blue end of the spectrum, and 700 nanometers at the deep red end of the spectrum. The reason I mention these numbers, 40 and 70 or 400 and 700, they repeat uncannily throughout history, especially in scriptures and mythologies, science, nature. It's all over the place. There's a meaning to these that is repeated, particularly in scriptures, in holy scriptures. There are some that are not quite so holy, as we all know. So first of all, purple actually is a mixture of red, white, and blue, as you can see up here. Sorry, I keep doing this. I have to remember which way I'm going. So red, white, and blue, when they're mixed together as a pigment, they produce purple. But it was produced in the old days from a rare flower. And it became, because it was so rare and expensive, it became traditionally used as the color for royalty, okay? But actually, the original masculine royal colors, if you wish, would be red and white. Red for the masculine and white for the spirit of the divine. Likewise, the original royal feminine colors would have been blue for the feminine and white for the divine, which is why in Catholic history, we see so many mystical apparitions of the lady that most people, are presuming to be Mary. Now, I'll tell you now, because I know people will be interested in this. I've been trying for a while to make enough time to write a book called Lifting Mary's Veil, the biggest case or the most extraordinary case of mistaken identity in religious history. And it's all about this lady of the apparitions. There's a reason she keeps appearing in blues and whites, okay? And it's connected to this original principle. Okay, guys? So here we go again. I have to remember this shoulder. Okay, here it is. So that's part of it. And the same reasons that Jesus as the Messiah, as this not mythological, but this historical Messiah figure, is reported to have been dressed in red and white. He had the red cloak when he was crucified and stuff like that. Now, again, it's all about mythology. If you go back, even I've shown some examples of this, in the history. You have the mythological heroes are often dressed in red. The bad guys, look at old movies, you'll see them in, black bandanas and red, or red bandanas and black suits and all this sort of stuff. Ninjas and all that. But then look at the satanic archetype. Look at how many paintings there are, or Count Dracula, or even cartoon villains, what colors they use to portray them. It's often reds and blacks. Now, there's a reason for this, guys, all right? It's all subliminal, it's archetypal, and it's connected to this original principle, okay? So if you understand that, it's easier then to start breaking down. Well, look, first of all, if we were never supposed to be in autocratic, authoritarian structures, if we were never supposed to be subject to them, which we weren't, then you ask yourself, well, what's the difference between, let's say, God's original concept for humanity and the satanic concept that started when Cain went off and set up the city of Enoch in the land of Nod? Well, as I said a few minutes ago, when the fall happened, the white, the deity that surrounded the Eve and the Adam figure, right, was replaced with the black, which is what? It's the absence of light. Actually, black, again, it's not a color other than in a pigment. It's the absence of light. These are very interesting things, guys. So if you grasp this notion that we're originally children of light, why? Partly because if you want to be a scientist and an atheist about it, well, how do we all begin? A big bang, a big explosion of light. Then you go into the Bible and you say, no, hold on. What does the Bible say? And the Bible says, God said, let there be light. Now, there's a conjunction between the two disciplines, the religious, the spiritual versus the scientific, natural, real. Also gives rise to this original principle idea that the two opposite ends of the spectrum. In other words, light is trying to be restored, not physical light, but the light that was originally in us, which is represented by the white of the divine. Okay, and the whole of let's call it providential history. I'll come back over to the questions in a second, guys. The whole the history of what is called the providence, or the providence of restoration, where there's all of these strange behaviors going on, especially between brothers, that equate back to Cain and Abel's story. All of these brothers coming down and there's about 8 sets of brothers culminating in Jesus and arguably his half-brother John the Baptist. And again, that's another story for another day. But in that culmination, they're all changing the position. The older brother serves the younger brother. They keep doing this. And each time they do it successfully, there's leaps and bounds made, And finally, eventually, then you begin to work out, hold on a minute. What's the problem with having an older brother, a big, strong, masculine guy in charge? Well, the first problem is, if he's more affiliated with the satanic archetype than he is with the godly one, you've got a problem. That's why you see the position on the logo up there. The blue is in the superior position. It's supposed to be deity, feminine, masculine, God, Eve, Adam, concept, plan, and action, theos, sophos, and logos for the theologians out there. And that's the way human society is supposed to be operating. And if that were the case, we wouldn't need governments. We wouldn't need armies. Now, I know it's a little bit, it's a bit hypothetical at the moment because we're living in a different reality, this fallen reality, but I see it changing, So, so I hope, the problem with politics is that it is largely a devious art. And there's all sorts of subterfuge and secrecy. And it takes a certain kind of person. If you're a thoroughly honest person, you couldn't be an effective politician. The only example or exception to this, but again, I don't see, believe it or not, even though Donald Trump is the president of America, I don't see him as a politician. I think that's pretty evident. He doesn't pussyfoot about. He goes in. Yes, he has personal issues that irritate people and all the rest of it, but he is going in and trying to do it right. I think I heard something on the news today, 8 wars in 8 months he's managed to stop. And he said something like, normally presidents start wars, they don't stop them, So there's something to be said for his approach. But part of his success, I believe, is because he is not of politics the same way that most of our so-called political leaders have, which is really a warning flag that, you're successful in politics? First warning flag. How did you manage? So how many lies did you tell on your way to the top? How many amoral decisions did you support, applaud? How many good ones did you ignore in order to get to where you are, which you call success? But it's success in this world, not in the kingdom that could be. But I believe that things are changing. I think we're in the age of wisdom at the moment. But anyway, back to this color thing. It's interesting, isn't it? For example, red, white, and blue. In the instructions to build the tabernacle out in the desert, the tabernacle was the mobile tent, if you like, that carried the Holy of Holies that the Israelis carried in the ancient days. And it was sort of like a portable church, if you like, to keep it simple. A sort of a portable church, not like the modern Catholic tabernacle now inside the church, a little golden box, but the same idea, the same concept. Something very holy is in it. And the instructions that were given from God, were to cover it with skins that were dyed red, white, blue, and purple. And as far as I know, nobody, and I studied world religions for several years in a seminary, nobody has explained why it had to be those colors. That's why I'm talking about this, all right? And it's only just one of many, many examples. There are brothers that one of them is born first. He puts his fist out of the birth canal and they tie a red string to it and he goes back. So technically he's the older brother, but the other brother comes out first. So there's that restoration of the two brothers that I talk about. There's Esau and Jacob, sons of Isaac. Yeah. Isaac is described as red and hairy all over. He's a big, strong man, the typical masculine. He's expecting the birthright, but instead he sells it to his younger brother for a bowl of red pottage. Why does it have to be red? And so on and so forth. It's all connected. It's all connected up to this original principle notion. And once you understand it, everything starts to make sense. It's a bit depressing at times because ultimately you can be an optimist. I'm an optimist in the sense that I do believe that ultimately right and truth and decency and ultimately God, the deity, the source, will win. Unfortunately, we're living through this battle, this sort of Armageddon-like time whereby lots of people, and thanks to the, let's call it the, I don't want to get this blocked, you see, for using the wrong words, but the pandemic, okay, that was a big kick up the proverbial butts to a lot of people. And it's made them ask questions they would otherwise never have thought of asking, but why? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to listen to these people? Why are we being locked in our homes? Who gives them the authority to do this? And it's opened up at least the question as to what is the real meaning of life? Are we supposed to be subservient to people that I describe as the diabolicals, meaning that they don't have our best interests at heart? They have wicked intentions. They don't see it as wicked. It's because they don't have genuine love, and you might call it spiritual love, if you like, in their lives. So they replace it with power and prestige and possessions. And often that means getting rid of anybody that's in your way. It's the sociopathic mindset or psychopathic mindset, which would be the complete opposite to the empathetic mindset. And what's this Paul is saying? Oh, sorry. Someone says here, Jelly Belly says, of course, as primary, I'll pull this up here, guys, again. Sorry, where is it? Sorry about that, guys, I'm clicking too fast. So Jelly Belly says, of course, as primary educators, it is up to us, the mothers and fathers, to instill who we are as a nation and as a people. I believe I've quoted that properly. Yes, well, this touches on the woke agenda and all of this gender ideology that's being taught in the school, especially to young children. Now, I'm telling you, you see, what we do is we tend to see these and we tackle the symptoms of the problem without understanding the origins of the problem again, because if the original, let's use the Adam and Eve figures, knew exactly who and what they were, male and female, we have made them, right? Male and female, we have made them, right? So Adam was very clear he was male. Eve was very clear she was a female, right? Now, as we understand this original principle, the connection is spirit, mind, and body, which is deity, feminine, masculine, in that order. The masculine is supposed to be subservient to the feminine mind, the masculine action body, to the feminine mind, which in turn is connected to the divine. That's the way it works. Now, if you can take a child who has the potential to become a true human being, as close to the original Eve as possible, or the original Adam, and you confuse them about their sexuality, which is down in the masculine area, the masculine chakra, if you like. Hello, Paul O'Neill, nice to see you, and Vaughan Malone. So if you can confuse children at an early stage in their life about their very identity, their sexual identity, well, that's at the core of the original principle, feminine and masculine. I've done a couple of videos on this, guys. If you're interested, I've got, I don't know how many, maybe, oh no, how many have I done? Yeah, maybe 50 or 60 of these videos up on Rumble, which I don't get a lot of views on there, but I've just being pulled for censorship reasons. But if that's the easiest place, because they may have been pulled, I've had a couple pulled from Facebook and YouTube, for example, because they, well, sometimes it's ridiculous. You end up appealing again to people you can't even identify for making decisions that make no sense. And so I decided, look, you know what I'll do? I'll just keep pumping them out there. I'm not going to get into arguments with these ill-informed people who don't know the difference between facts and reality anymore. I'll just pump out the material. I even, for example, let these videos now will be split up into about 10 automatic. It's AI generated. I don't even edit them. I might edit the title, but that's all. And if they sound like there's something to say, I'll fire them up on TikTok. Again, they're just there. The whole point is to get the information out there. The more people that understand this notion of the original principle, the sooner we'll all start to work in harmony together and bring about the proverbial kingdom of heaven on earth. And for those of you who may not be very religious, I mean, interestingly, people ask me, what's my religion? And my answer is Stephen Manning, which is a bit of a shock to some people. But it's because I'm pointing out to people that your religion ideally should be a reflection of your relationship to the divine. And because you are unique, your relationship to the divine will be unique. That's why there's a danger, and I say a danger in orchestrated, organized religion, trying to corral everyone into a blueprinted way of trying to communicate with the divine, so to speak, because often that perverts, and these religious organizations and institutions become the very antithesis of what they're supposed to be representing. They become autocratic institutions that dictate to you what you should and should not be doing, can or cannot do, instead of encouraging the individual to find their own personal, unique relationship with the divine. And you'll know it. If you get it, guys, you'll know it. You'll know it's for real. It all aligns. And oh my God. And things might, mysterious and wonderful things might start happening to you as well. But again, that's a story for another day, maybe. I don't want to put people off. But if you're not religious, you'll be pleased to hear I also planned another book. The title was supposed to be Religion is Over, Thank God. Right? A little bit of a pun intended there. But the idea was to explain to people that the whole point of religion, I'm saying, is to, is to bring us up to the, Danny's laughing at me over there, bring us up to back to the original principle. It brings back to this notion. And it's a bit like being in excellent good health, all right, which would be this notion of the original principle. We're in excellent good health. We're Adam figures or Eve figures, perfect embodiments of the masculine divine spirit in human form, right? And something goes wrong. So now we're in a form of dis-ease, mal-ease, disease, sin, if you like, enters the world. And we have greed and violence and wars and pollution and oppression of the weak, because it's all a reflection of the male it's the satanic masculine dominating the feminine. So because that's the state of affairs, we've got to try and reverse that. So in religion, there was no religion in the Garden of Eden. There couldn't be. It's pointless. There's no point in it. Not if you're walking and talking with God, naked and unashamed, as it said. There's no need for religion. You're there with the man, the guy, the thing, the entity, the source. So there's no need for any religion. So religion began after the fall. It actually begins, believe it or not, with the Cain and Abel story. But again, we won't go into that today. But the point I'm trying to make is that when religion is seen by many religious adherents as being the truth, but that cannot be literally possible. The very best religion could be offering any of us is that it points to the truth. And once you get to that truth as an individual or as a collective eventually, but first of all, it has to happen as an individual, of course. Once you get to that truth, you don't need religion anymore, all right? Because truth always trumps beliefs. And most religions are belief-based systems, okay? Now, again, it's a complicated, right, so we've got, right, here we go. Who's this now? Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. Yes, so Vron Malone says Heather Humphreys approved of removing the word mother from the Constitution. There's a big giveaway, guys. you break to see this concept as well. The original principle up here also equates to the notion of a family, because it equates to the atomic structure, where you have protons, which would equate to the masculine element, neutrons, which equates to the feminine element, and electrons, which is buzzing around the two, binding them together, arguably like a family unit where the man and the woman are bonded together in genuine, agape love. Okay, it's the same notion, guys. So anything that is attacking the idea of the family unit, the idea of children's sexual identity, the notion that you have the authority and power to make your own decisions in life, anything that attacks anything like that is most definitely not coming from a good source. Okay, we should know that. And the people that advocate these things should be last on your list, to be voted for, to be funded, to be employed, to be married to, and if you can't get away with them, just put a safe distance between them. Now, someone said something here. I'll just come back. I'm sorry. Here we go. Now, I'm not saying that I'm trying to pull a comment down here. I'll miss some, of course, but any that are on Facebook, I'll go to them later and try and answer them, guys, or at least give you a like to see that, let you see that I've read them. This is Jerry. Jerry says, religion, is it showing? Yeah, religion is the truth taken over and twisted for control. Yes, in to a certain extent, this is not an inaccurate comment, Jerry. And if I may, like I said to you, at one time I was actually in religious ministry in Alaska for a short period, but I also spent time in a seminary, about 3 years or more, and I've spent much of my life investigating world religions, and because I had this question in my mind, this pressing question: what is the meaning of life? And of course, many religions claim to know the meaning of life. Some of them have some very valuable and interesting insights. Christianity, for example, in general, espouses loving one's neighbor. In contrast, radical jihadi Islam, for example, which I've talked about recently, advocates wiping anybody off the earth who isn't in your clique, and then, believe it or not, the symbolism is very, very interesting when you get into all of the Arab states. Look at their flags and see how many of them have blue in it. Okay, interesting, right? And the predominance of the reds and the blacks and things like that. It makes you have to start asking questions. Now, again, I'm not sweeping the board, because I actually have Muslim friends, decent, honorable people, who don't live in a antagonistic, murderous way, but the worst of them do, sadly, and the symbolism aligns with it as well. They're attacking this original principle, basically, But twisted for control, yes. You see, as soon as you get an autocratic organization, which I represent in these pyramids, and the pyramids have the autocrat or the dictator or the boss, the corporate, the CEO, whoever it might be, the government, whoever, in charge at the top. Then they have a big band of bureaucrats and administrators who do basically the organizing, the thinking. So there you have again the spirit. What's the spirit? In many cases, in autocratic organizations, it's a dark spirit, I'm afraid to say. That's because it goes back to this model. The original model, there was no pyramid structure. There was just alignment between the masculine, the feminine, and the divine. And with that alignment, you would collaborate, and there would be people with greater or lesser levels of expertise or wisdom that would freely share, because the whole point would be to elevate the whole community rather than to dominate it from the top down, which is the diabolical model. Okay, and that's why society is going to have to undergo a radical change for this all to work out. But as for religion taking over, religion is the truth taken over and twisted for control. Well, first of all, religion itself, not in any form, can possibly be the truth with a capital T, because the truth is represented by this original symbol, the original principle. So religions that claim to be the truth are either mistaken or involved in deception. Secondly, there's the business of religion, probably no more so evident. We'll just use the Catholic Church as an obvious example of the business becoming more important than, let's call it, the truth, or finding the truth, or even religion, okay? The business becomes more important when, for example, you know, the scandal of the priest, the pedophilia scandal, you know, is exposed. And a lot of so-called good men, let's say, like, for example, Pope Francis, who appeared to come from humble beginnings and appeared to be a very decent man. But on one occasion, one of his aides said he saw the moment that he lost his innocence as Pope, when he went down to admonish some bishop or archbishop for covering up pedophilia. And a realization hit him. Hold on a minute. You know, what am I? Am I the CEO of an international global corporation? Or am I, you know, Christ vicar on earth and acting in a Christ-like manner? And sadly, the reality was there was so much pressure on him as the CEO of an international global corporation, which means it reflects the diabolical structure, not the godly structure, right? And we saw what happened. All right. I hope that explains that point. Let's see what else we've found here. Sean says we must find our own path. We judge ourselves, really. Yeah, to a certain extent. But, you know, we have to also make allowances for the fact that we're born, Sean. We're born into this diabolical system. We're born into the kingdom of hell on earth. I mean, it's literally that. Almost everything that is presented to us as authoritative, we are discovering, is a deception of some sort. It's either designed to get us to, you know, to follow certain procedures and protocols, the birth certificate, you know, the giving of blood, getting blood taken from you at birth and all this, going to the courts, yes or no, sir, doing as you're told. You know, everything is designed to deceive us in one way or another. Look at the pandemic. Look at what's the percentage of the so-called professions that sold their souls, yeah, who dropped their morality, dropped their ethics, dropped their concern for their fellow human beings in order to go with the flow, get the rewards, the worldly rewards of doing so. How many did that? Yeah. The percentages of genuine ethical professionals that are left after the pandemic must be minuscule. And we know some of them. And their courage and bravery should be an inspiration to us all. But those are the people who are responding to the divine urgings in their conscience that says, no, there's something wrong here, and I'm supposed to be a qualified doctor or a qualified scientist. I can't just accept this because my boss or the head of the CDC said it's so. I should look into it. I mean, I wrote this book, Crisis, Cull or Coup, What, How and Who, Facts and Truths to Make You Think. I did an awful lot of research for that book, and all of the data was out there. All of the facts were there. All it took was some time and effort to go in and compile it into a book format so that you can give, well, I sold it, of course, you know, but, you know, at some point, probably in the near future, we'll release it as just as a free PDF, just because the information belongs to all of us. And the sooner that we all understand this original principle, the sooner we can hope to create better futures for our children. Let's see. Irish 57 says, Heather, oh, here we go. I'll just, again, this is, we only have a few more minutes left, guys, but we'll make the most of it. Heather, this is Heather Humphreys, also put back mother and baby homes, industrial schools during COVID for 70 years as a cost-cutting measure for the state. So I suppose this means invest, guys, especially the industrial schools thing, because I basically, when I say represented, I'm not a lawyer myself, but my very good friend is an old man now. He's a Chelsea pensioner, and he was raised. He was sentenced as a 2-year-old to an industrial school for the crime of having an unfit mother. Believe it or not, guys, that's how they did it back in the days. Not unlike the Jews handing Jesus over to the Romans, you deal with him. In the same way, the church would go into Irish homes and had the power to declare parents to be unfit to look after their children. And with that, the state would come in and charge the children with a crime. They were prosecuted in the district courts, I believe. And their crime was having an unfit mother. And on the basis of that accusation, they were then handed over to the religious bodies, who in turn would farm them out and make, first of all, they got paid half a labourer's wage for every child in their care. Then on top of that, they would farm them out to farms or laundries or whatever it might be, or just have them work in the industrial schools, and they would make profits off them. Not to mention all of the babies that were deceitfully taken off their mothers. The mothers were told, often they were unwed mothers, you know, the mothers were told, and they were locked up in these institutions, the Magdalene laundries, and the mothers were told, you know, your babies died. And what were the nuns actually doing? Selling them to rich Americans, selling the babies to rich Americans. I mean, and then they sealed all the records. And so somebody who finds out the true story in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or even older, and comes tearfully looking for their natural mother, and they find out that all the records have been sealed, and that the lawyers, you know, the diabolicals acting for the religious orders, come in to protect the interests of what? The institution, not what's right, truthful, and good. Okay. So that's interesting. I think, oh yeah, this is worth seeing as well, also about Connolly and Humphreys voted us into lockdown during COVID. Yeah, again, they were just doing as they were told, following the party whip, following the instructions from above, from the EU, from the globalists, from the World Economic Forum, from the UN, from the World Health Organization. All of these are massively typical diabolical constructs, guys. We've got to stop looking to them. We've got to start taking our power back as best we can. We are teenagers in the, oh, sorry, I don't know where that it disappeared. I get an opportunity. We are teenagers in the meaning of life. Yes, I think that's what it means there. Yeah, I agree. Teenagers and poorly informed, misdirected, misguided teenagers doing our best to reconnect with the original principle, to reconnect as a man or a woman with the divine. And just very briefly, this is not to discount all of the genuinely gay people out there, or the people who are, what should I call it, gender confused, or just, we could say that, I'm not being rude here, but there's a literal logical reason for why a certain percentage of the population finds themselves not able to align firmly with the masculine end of the spectrum or the feminine end of the spectrum. And I hope you get a little sort of joy out of this observation. But if, for example, before the fall, all of the decisions that Adam and Eve, or whoever their colleagues were at the time, all of the decisions that they made were made on this basis. The spirit, which is the spirit of God, informed the mind, the feminine mind, to direct the body to do what it was going to do. So therefore, arguably, in those days, in the original kingdom of heaven, I'll have to be quick here, guys, in the original kingdom of heaven, if you were going to choose a husband or a wife, you'd have done so on that premise, connected to the divine. What if the reason for all of the sexual and gender identity confusion in the world today is because of centuries of poor mating choices? Because we've been picking our marriage partners to have children with, not necessarily based on a connection with the divine. I'll leave you with that, guys. And thank you very much. It's been an entertaining little experiment. Those of you I didn't give a mention to, I apologize. But thank you anyway for, thank you everyone for participating this evening. Irish 557, Linuxer, and so on and so forth. And I'll go through, I missed so many lovely comments that didn't all come up on the screen. But I'll have to say goodnight at this point, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully next week we'll have a prepared slideshow as usual on a current important topic. God bless everyone, and please be good to each other.